Hey guys, this is Vince with Practical Performance. This is an installation video for the input shaft adapter for the 188K diff for the BMW 46. So the adapter converts the standard universal joint style input to the 330i style CV joint. The kit consists of the actual adapter and 6 bolts. 4 standard M10 bolts and 2 of them are machined. We'll get into that later. You can see that from this view that there are 2 bolt patterns in the adapter. So I marked them in blue and in red. So the blue bolt pattern, I also marked the ends of the bolts with colored blue. So the blue is obviously for attaching the adapter to the diff. The red bolt pattern is attaching the CV joint to the actual adapter, just as you would do with a normal input shaft for the 330i diff. Having removed the adapter, we can see the actual adapter right there and the 6 before mentioned bolts. They are all high strength 10.9 grade. I call these standard because they are unmachined, they're fully threaded. These 2 bolts here are machined, so some of the thread is machined off and they're a little bit shorter than the standard ones. So the reason for them is we're going to use not only the 4 unthreaded holes, we're also going to be using 2 of the threaded holes in this flange here. The adapter bolts go through this rather thin flange here, and because they are so short, compared to the longer bolts that go through the CV joint, there's not much stretch in them. Therefore, we're going to be using thread locker. And because we're using the thread locker, we need to make sure that the surfaces are nice and clean so we don't contaminate to get grease and stuff like that into the thread locker and the threads. I also recommend having these nice and clean so the screws go in and easily, so you really feel that you're not cross-threading anything. Sorry. So this is what you would typically be finding in a used diff. So the threads are kind of okay, they're rusty. These holes, unthreaded holes, are full of rust. There could be a lot of greases and stuff as well. So what we'll do is we'll start with cleaning out the unthreaded holes with an 11mm drill bit. We're using an M10 thread tap through the threaded holes, and this inner surface here in which I'm going to flip this over, so this surface right there, it aligns, make sure that the adapter is centered perfectly. So this is intentionally quite a tight fit, so we need to get all the rust and potential dirt out of there. Using a power drill, you'll be running the 11mm drill bit through the unthreaded holes. Fits perfectly. As you can see, it removes rust and dirt, but it does not actually remove any material, any steel. You will also be using the power drill for a wire wheel, brushy kind of thing like this. You want to, as I said, clean this inner surface right there. You may also want to use a bit of a sanding paper fine grit if needed. And finally run the tap through the holes. And once that's done, you will have a result similar to this. Once you've cleaned the surfaces, you want to make sure that the adapter slides in so this surface right here slides into that surface without too much resistance. So you should be able to put it in and make sure that these surfaces they have full contact. Oh, actually, you want to make sure that this surface is clean as well, obviously, otherwise the adapter will be tilting a little bit. As I previously mentioned, there are 2 bolt patterns here. So we have the blue one and the red one. So the red one is for the CV joint screws, and they are evenly spaced, as you can see here, while the blue ones are spaced 3 plus 3. It's super important that you use the right bolt pattern, because the blue one is slightly smaller than the red one, which is larger. And if you use the wrong ones, you will cross thread and things will get bad. So therefore, I have marked them blue with blue ends for the bolts. The standard unmachined bolts, they slide into The unthreaded holes, as such, you'll have to tilt them at a small angle. They will not slide in like that. They can go in, they slide in at any point when you have the adapter there or not. So they are easy. Now, that gets us to why do we have these weird machined bolts? Now, we only have 4 unmachined holes, and that is probably more than adequate. But because the CV joint has 6 bolts, and people might wonder why are we only running 4 for the adapter, and I also found a way to use 6 bolts to fit 2 bolt patterns. This is what I came up with. So the additional 2 bolts, they go into 2 of the threaded holes. So we're going to be using this here, and it slides in perpendicular to the surface there. Now we have a situation where we have 2 threaded holes, one in the flange and one in the actual adapter. And while they are actually perfectly aligned, the pitch of the threads may not be aligned. They're probably most certainly not, and meaning it will spin really easily through the flange, but once you hit the other thread in the adapter, they might start fighting each other, and you will feel a pretty significant resistance. Worst case, you can get this all stuck. So this is where the machined off threads come into the picture. So you will install the 2 machined screws without the adapter. So that's off for the moment. You screw in the machine screws, and once they are all the way through, you can see how they spin freely because now there's this unmachined part of the screw. I'll add the other one off camera, and I'll show you how this all comes together. So now we have both the machine screws in the flange, and they spin freely. This is where you want to add thread locker to these screws. The next thing you do is make sure that you have your adapter positioned such that you have the 3+3 pattern like this. So I have the 2 machine screws vertically like this. You want to make sure that this screw hits the middle hole of the 3+3 pattern. So you put it up against, so you can do that on camera, like that, and you start screwing in the screws and make sure the adapter sits against the... Now that I got the thread started off camera, you can see that with my fingers I can screw this in, and it will start pulling the adapter towards the flange. You will be alternating between the 2 so it doesn't get stuck with the chest drawer kind of effect, and so you just keep going like this until you have it all the way in. On camera, I screwed both of these in. I have the adapter sitting against the flange, and I just snugly tightened with a wrench like this. So this is the point where you want to start installing the standard screws, and this is when you add thread locker to these screws, and they slide in at a slight angle like this, and now you just tighten these. So these should also go in finger tight. Well, not finger tight, they should go in screwing with your fingers like this. If you have a lot of resistance, something is wrong. Start over, check that you have them aligned correctly, and so on and so forth. So from this point, you just add all the 4 standard screws, and you tighten these. Because there's really no way to get a torque wrench in here, I can't really recommend a torque. So this is going to be mechanics tight, if that makes sense. So you tighten them hard, but don't break them. And you are all set to get the diff into the car and attach the drive shaft and the CV joint. Oh yeah, so this inner surface here as well is intentionally, it's a very, very, very fine tolerance. It's intentionally tight so that the CV joint it's aligned perfectly. You may need to remove some rust on the outside of the actual CV joint if it's not new. You may also need to use sanding paper if it's too tight. I'd really like some feedback as well on the fitment there, if I need to make this slightly larger or not. And finally, one more thing before we end this installation video. This is in regards to removing the adapter, because this is easily removed and put onto another diff with a different diff ratio, which is kind of the whole point with this adapter. Now, the screws, this is the point. The screws that go through the unthreaded holes, you just remove them, obviously, just as any screw, like this, at any point. Now, the other two screws here, the ones that go through the threaded holes, just as we needed to get them threaded through the flange before we added the adapter, now we need to do the opposite, because once we get these started to come off, they spin easily a little bit like that until the two threads interconnect. So what you want to do is you want to untighten these two simultaneously and move them until they sort of spin a little bit with more resistance, and then you keep moving the adapter outwards as you're removing the screws, so they don't sort of lock. So that's it. That's how you install the 188K input shaft adapter for allowing the CV joint style input shaft of the 330 to go on to a, let's call it a standard E46 diff with the universal joint style input.